my life. I have no life but his. I was mistaken when I thought I lived apart from God. God is my life. I have no life but his. Now I know my life is God's. I have no other home. He has no thoughts that are not part of me. And I have none but those which are of him. God is my life. I have no life but his. Now I know my life is God's. I have no other home. Maybe I don't need to ask this question, but where's that song from? It's from the band whose name is G-D. That's a hint. All right. The Dead, right? Ripple. So, sorry if you wanted to figure it out. I'm going to do a video one of these days about that song. I think that song is the closest, one of the closest to a perfect song that you can find. Anyway, but we're on lesson 223 of A Course in Miracles. God is my life. I have no life but his. Jesus also has said, God is life, right? God is life. Love is life. There is no life outside of heaven, right? There is no existence, really. The dream, quote unquote, reality that we seem to be in right now is really but a dream. Life is but a dream, right? The song, row, row, row your boat. Life is but a dream. It is a dream, which means it's not ultimately real. If it's not ultimately real, it's not real at all. Sometimes we say, part of the thing with the Course is that anything that's not ultimately real is not truly real. It's not, it really is not real. And if you make it real, you're making a mistake, right? You're just making a mistake. You're not sinful. You are just mistaken. Sadly mistaken only because you're probably sad, right? You'd be happily corrected. That's part of the Course is to be happily corrected. And this is getting at that. So let's read this. So God is my life. I have no life but his. This is Jesus' commentary. I was mistaken when I thought I lived apart from God, a separate entity that moved in isolation, unattached, and housed within a body. Now I know my life is God's. I have no other home, and I do not exist apart from him. He has no thoughts that are not part of me, and I have none but those which are of him. And then the second part of this is a prayer, and it's all in italics. And there's a lot of these prayers in italics in this whole second part of the Course. So this is the prayer. Our Father, let us see the face of Christ instead of our mistakes. For we who are your Holy Son are sinless. We would look upon our sinlessness, for guilt proclaims that we are not your Son. And we would not forget you longer. We are lonely here and long for heaven, where we are at home. Today we would return. Our name is yours, and we acknowledge that we are your Son. Okay, so we'll go back to the beginning. Let's talk about this a little bit. God is my life. I have no life but his. There's no life outside of heaven. There's no life outside of God, which is the same thing. God, who is love, is the ultimate reality. God is love and only love, and that is life, and that is all that life really is, right? You can't give the name life really to anything except that, which which is a very big statement, right? So, paragraph 1. I was mistaken when I thought I lived apart from God, a separate entity that moved in isolation, unattached, and housed within a body. That was a mistake, right? That's the one mistake, really, and the only mistake that we're trying to correct here, right? All this whole course is about correcting that error of understanding. Now I know my life is God's. I have no other home, and I do not exist apart from him. Now, how do we know this? We only really know it. We may feel that it's true, right? And I'm sure many people that are doing the course feel that it's true. But we also know because of the course, right? The course is telling us. And if we believe that the course is coming from the highest source, in this case, understood to be Jesus, who is the ideal of perfect love, and if we feel that that's really where the course is coming from, then then we believe the statement. I know my life is God's. I have no other home, in that I do not exist apart from him. Now, we also may know this because we've had the experience. We also may know this because we've been working with a course and we see how the course really works. We may not know this completely, but this is where we're going, right? This is where we're headed. He has no thoughts that are not part of me, and I have none but those which are of him. So my mind is one with God's mind. My thoughts are, I'm aligning my mind. I'm correcting my perceptions. I'm correcting my understanding, so that my thinking is in accordance with God's mind, God's thoughts, so to speak, because ultimately I don't know if God has a mind or thoughts in reality. I think that and that's where we could really talk. What is the course really getting at? Does God have a mind? We know that God does not have a body, right? Right. This is saying we don't have a body. If we don't have a body, God does not have a body. And I have something to say about this, but I think is interesting. But let me just finish the thought, which is a mind is also kind of goes along with the body, even though the mind is not physical. Does God ultimately have a mind? Does God have thoughts? I think that's also figurative, metaphorical language that Jesus is using, only because that's how we think of things, right? We think in those terms, but ultimately there is only the one reality. The one reality has no separation. If there's no separation, then there's no separate concepts, right? There's no mind, there's no thoughts, there's no, because mind and thoughts, generally when we think of that, we think about something. God does not think about things, right? Because God, if God is only oneness, there's only one thought, right? There's only the thought of love. There's only that perfect love. I hope this is making sense. I think this is really beyond all of us, beyond me, beyond all of us, what this really means. But I'm just trying to say, based on what Jesus is saying, which is that I am not a body. God does not have a body. God is not a person. God is not, does not have human attributes, for sure. Then what is God, right? And what we've been talking about is that God is more of an abstract essence of love. The word love maybe is the best word that we can use, even though ultimately love is just a word as well. Love is just a concept, but love perhaps is the word that best can point to what we're talking about. Because we all have this thing with love, right? Just about everyone in the world. I think everyone, every culture has a word for love. Maybe we can go into the different terms for love. In different cultures. One thing that we can say is, like in Greek, in Greek, there's eros and there's agape, right? For example, eros would be more like romantic, sexual love, and agape would be more like the love of from your heart, from not that eros cannot be that way, but generally it's not. Eros is more lustful. Agape would be more of like the love of the heart, the love between a parent and a child, or the love between two people in the same family, or that kind of love. So let's read the prayer, and then I'll share that little thing I was going to share. Our Father, let us see the face of Christ instead of our mistakes. For we who are your Holy Son are sinless. We would look upon our sinlessness, for guilt proclaims that we are not your Son, and we would not forget you longer. We are lonely here and long for heaven, where we are at home. Today we would return. Our name is yours. And the name I talked about, Jesus keeps bringing in the name now. This is recent that Jesus started talking about the name of God. I call upon God's name and on my own was one of the lessons. But what is God's name? God does not really have a name. So we're really, I think, talking about God's essence. I call upon the Spirit of God. I call upon the essence of God. I call upon the reality that God is, which is really the only reality. Our name is yours, and we acknowledge that we are your Son. It's a beautiful prayer, right? Beautiful prayer. So the thing I wanted to share was there's a story that I actually put the story out on Facebook, and the story, just very simply put, is after the war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas that's talked about in the Mahabharata, which is the great Indian epic story, one of the great Indian epics, where we find the Bhagavad Gita. After that all happened, after the Pandavas defeated the Kauravas, then some of the Pandavas decided they were going to go try to enter heaven in their body. And the story is how all of them except one died on the way. They were trying to get to heaven in their body, and the one that made it found a dog along the way. And when he got to like the gate of heaven, he was told that he could not bring the dog with him to heaven. And he said, well, if I can't bring this dog, then I'm not going. And then the dog actually turned into, I think, Dharma. He had become Dharma, or Dharma had become the dog, as a test. And this guy's name is Yudhishthira. And it was his final test. Like, was he going to enter heaven without the dog? And he said, no, I'm not gonna go to heaven without this dog. I think part of the story is that you could, wanting to go to heaven with your body is maybe a little bit vain, right? And even if you had a body in heaven, would you not grow tired of it, right? And would you not grow tired of and feel lonely, like this says, feel lonely and feel separate. And so that's a question. Although perhaps it's true. Perhaps it is possible to be in heaven in some kind of body. Let's leave that an open question. I think it's definitely one worth pondering. It was definitely in that story that there are perfected beings. They're called siddhas in Sanskrit, who are able to enter heaven in their physical body. Except everyone in the story did not enter heaven in the physical body, except I think Yudhishthira actually was taken into heaven on Indra's chariot and entered heaven in a physical body. And you have stories like that in the Bible as well, where there are, I think, who was it? Elijah, who went to heaven on the chariot, or Ezekiel, I forget now, was taken up into heaven on the chariot and got to heaven in the physical body. Anyway, I think that's all. Oh, yeah, I think that's all for right now. I'm probably going to do a video about Ripple. I think Ripple is a really cool song. Not just cool. I think it's a timeless, ageless song. I think it's one of the great songs that came out of the 60s. Actually, it was recorded in 70, but I think it was probably written in the late 60s. God is my life. I have no life but His. I was mistaken when I thought I lived apart from God. God is my life. I have no life but His. Now I know my life is God's. I have no other home. Do 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 do.